Ja. Testa om du hör mig. I will start with some Swedish. Kollar du att det funkar där, Abby? Den är åt liggande istället. Vi testar. Ja. Hej, välkomna till Blankspots extrainsatta live-sändning. Vi har ju rapporterat mycket om vad som händer i Etiopien. Premiärministern har avgått, undantagstillstånd utlyst. Det kommer rapporter om demonstrationer, om demonstranter som blir skjutna. Och idag så kom en rapport om att en av de mest tongivande aktivisterna, Jawar Mohamed, har för 4:e gången blivit avstängd från Facebook på grund av sina kommentarer till utvecklingen. Så vi har ringt upp Jawar Mohamed på Skype. Thank you so much, Jawar Mohamed, for joining us. I gave a brief introduction to the viewers. You are a political analyst, and you're also the executive director of the Oromia Media Network. Could you just start to give us what is going on in Ethiopia these days? What are we seeing? What is happening?
Martin, as you know, for the last 4 years there has been a social movement protest largely in Oromia, but also in Amhara and now in the south. The protesters have gathered significant momentum. They have weakened the regime. The regime has a split into different rival factions, both along ethnic lines as well as different groupings. So the Prime Minister was forced to resign a couple of weeks ago, and then the military came in, declared a state of emergency. That state of emergency was rejected at the parliament, but the Speaker of the Parliament, rigged the votes and declared it that it passed, and then a lot of confusion and commotion going on. And the economy is in free falls. The government is not able to pay a lot of its foreign loans. So from both economy, security and political point of view, Ethiopia today is in a very serious crisis.
The recent state of emergency, and also when the Prime Minister resigned, do you see that as a result of the protest that has been ongoing for the last 2 years? Are the protests bearing fruit, so to speak?
Oh, definitely, because what the protesters have done is weakened the government's economic strength. They significantly affected the revenue, the income revenue, by cutting down the foreign direct investment, also by reducing domestic trade volume, and also it completely rejected the government. The government attempted to retake, particularly Oromia, through state of emergency last year. That did not work. They tried to buy time. They tried to pretend that there's undertaking reform by bringing some populist leadership into Oromia, but those leaders got a lot of acceptance in Oromia. Eventually, the regime has to remove them from their post. So what you have is a movement-induced and opposition-infused, particularly a popular resistance-infused political crisis that is bringing down the government. And I don't know if you saw it. There was a paper, a national security paper, that was released about 3 months ago. It openly admits that there is no external actors at play, and that the protests have gone out of control, and they cannot take control of the protest anymore, and that the ruling party is split, and it has no leadership, and it has no internal cohesion. So they do believe that not only that the protest is legitimate, but also the grievances are shared, widely shared, even within the ruling party. The problem is, even though they analyze like this by admitting problems and but when it comes to solution, instead of seeking political solution, they continue to rely heavily on the security. For example, last month, they released political prisoners. The Prime Minister resigned. You would expect they open up the political space and start negotiating with the opposition. Instead, they declare a state of emergency and start mass arrest and mass killing. So a lot of things happening.
Mm-hmm. One of the latest development is that yesterday it came out that for the 4th time, your Facebook account has been terminated or blocked. Why did that happen? And is it a result of the current political situation, or is it just some technical issue?
Well, initially I thought it was technical issue. Even then, I thought it was strange because one, my profile is verified, and I'm one of the earliest people to join Facebook in 2005 when it was still just a platform for college students. I was a college student at Stanford University in California, which is just a mile away from Facebook's headquarters at the time. I'm well known within the Facebook community, and I have been using Facebook to advocate for democracy and expose human rights violations. I'm very careful with my postings, I thought when they said I was posting so fast, I wasn't really posting faster than I usually post. Then Facebook communication people reached out to me, and they said I did not make any mistake. I did not violate any of their terms of use, and that there was a mistake was on their part, and they restored my service and they issued apology. And fast forward about 3 days ago, again I get blocked. I write to them and they remove the blockade without explanation. And then yesterday again I get blocked and they remove it without explanation. And last night again I get blocked, and I remain blocked at this time. Not only that, it seems there are some manual manipulation of the algorithms, because for example, 2 days ago I could post on my wall from a friend's account, but now I cannot post it. But another thing that makes you suspicious is the timing. They block me at the time when the people in Ethiopia are most active on Facebook. As you know, internet is limited, and Facebook and other social media are limited, and they're accessible only through Wi-Fi and through government offices and big hotels. So during those windows, they block me, and once the people in Ethiopia go to sleep, they unblock me. So I am strongly inclined to suspect some foul play, probably by some rogue employee who is being paid by the government, or maybe at the management level. I'm not sure, but I think this is a serious concern, not only for me. It's a serious concern for the human rights community globally, because if Facebook as a company or a rogue employee in Facebook can do this, what guarantee do we have for our online security and privacy? As you know, I have millions of followers, and they send me information. They live under repressive governments, and if the company which cherishes freedom of expression cannot protect us, then we are in serious danger.
One thing that's happened after your block was that your Twitter account has been a way of following the development, and just a couple of days ago you tweeted pictures from empty cities around Ethiopia, and talking about strikes and a market boycott. And it's very we don't hear much from what's happening outside Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Could you just describe the situation? What is this boycott about? What are people trying to gain through the boycott? And there has also been a report of protesters being killed the last days.
Yes, so this is there are two things at play here. One, after the EPRDF, the ruling party executive committee, held a 17-day meeting. They promised a range of reforms, but they failed to implement them. One of that was to release political prisoners. They delayed that, so people were frustrated, and a 3-day strike was called in Oromia about 3 weeks ago. It was very successful, and it forced the regime to release them on the second day of the strike. Then they brought this state of emergency. This state of emergency was resisted, opposed, not by the protesters, but by the ministers. It couldn't get enough vote in the Council of Ministers. They couldn't agree after all-day meeting, and then they went home. They sent journalists back, but the military and intelligence decided to read a statement on the on the TV declaring the state of emergency, although the Council of Ministers really did not agree on the matter. Then it came to the Parliament. Heavy campaign was done by activist community to persuade parliamentarians not to ratify the state of emergency. This created a tension, and they tried to persuade parliamentarians before the meeting through intimidation and all kind of activities. It didn't work, particularly in Oromia. There was a unified opposition, and in the Parliament there is heavy resistance. The bill needed 2/3 of the 547 votes parliamentarians. It failed to secure. It was able to secure only 346 votes. It needed 365 votes. So the measure failed. However, the Speaker of the House decided, even while reading the numbers, to declare the measure has the bill has passed. That was a major shock, so the ultimatum was put by the protesters that the regime must admit that the bill, the state of emergency, has failed to gain the 2/3 required vote, and they must admit and announce, otherwise it will be met with a resistance. The government did not do that. Instead, they sent the Speaker of the House on the media to add more lies. That really angered the protesters, and they called for 3-day strike with the aim of choking the capital city. So starting from Monday, from faraway rural towns all the way to all cities that surround Addis Ababa, there was a full-scale strike that blocked. Would not move, shops did not open, workers did not go to their jobs. So it ended today. It was very successful. It did choke off the capital city. It did send a strong signal. The problem is the government has shut down internet completely from outside Addis Ababa. Even inside Addis Ababa, they have slowed down to 2G, and with regular interruption both in electric supply and the internet supply. So yes, we are not getting as much information as we should, but this protest, the government itself on media did admit that the strike was expansive and did cripple the country for 3 days.
If you listen to the regime spokesman now, many people are also accusing people in exile and also your media network for fueling ethnic tension, and they say this is a situation where we don't need more of ethnic tension. How do you respond to those allegations?
Well, the ethnic tensions are actually the result of the government's policy. As you know, this government is dominated by elite drawn from a very small group. They have exercised unimaginable level of discrimination across ethnic lines in the military, in the economy, in all everyday life in Ethiopia. This is not a secret for anybody who knows Ethiopia. The level of discrimination is extremely worrisome. Of course, this creates a lot of anger among other people, other groups of people. So what we do as a media is report the regime's corruption, discriminations, and expose how blatant it is that they implement a policy of discriminating against some group of people while favoring certain group of people. We don't report about that, and that's our responsibility. But when we report, we use a very guarded language. They have accused us many times to different jurisdictions, governments and international entities. We submitted our program for evaluation. At every juncture, we did pass the standard required for a media. So we are not fueling the ethnic tension. We are exposing the discrimination. We are exposing what they have been doing. For example, the government instigated a conflict between the Somali regional state and the Oromia regional state. These are two people, you have been there, these are two people are indistinguishable in culture, in the way they live. They have no problem. But they armed militias on both sides, and they created this military, this legal police that was engaged in ethnic cleansing in Somali region. They sent them across border in Oromia, and they undertook massive invasion, mass killing. And we report about this kind of stuff. And when we do that, and we do it very carefully, at no point did we lead the public to believe this was carried out by the Somali community. This was not a communal conflict. It was not a conflict between Somali and Oromo community. It was a conflict instigated by the state. So we expose this kind of blatant work by the state. Contrary to their accusation, we work very hard to diffuse ethnic tension. We spend significant time preaching why the Oromos or the Somalis or the Amharas must protect others who reside among them. Despite the government's claim over the last 4 years of this protest, people kicked out the government officials and institutions from major towns for weeks, and at no time did they harm other ethnic groups among them. Not even the Tigrayans. As you know, the Tigrayans elites dominate politics, economy, and military, and it is their generals who are carrying out the mass killings. Yet the Tigrayans live in peace in various parts of Oromia. So the accusation is really not true. But the other issue related to that is, the government they always want to externalize the problem. The reason why we function outside the country, the reason why there are media outlets out here, is because they cannot function inside the country. The journalists are in jail, and the media house, independent media houses are concerned. They use, they dominate, they monopolize the media, let alone an independent media like ours. Even government media is under heavy censorship these days, so the accusation really doesn't hold that much water, and I encourage and I invite the viewers to look into our content and give us feedback if they see anything that fuels ethnic tension.
How do you see the road ahead? I mean, there are some journalists who have been released. A lot of political prisoners has been released. Are these signs of a new dawn for Ethiopia? Positive signs that along the road there is political reform in the making, or how do you see the future ahead? What needs to be done to solve this current political crisis?
I think the solution would have been what they attempted but aborted. The decision to release political prisoners, the decision for the Prime Minister to resign, and the promise by the Executive Committee to liberalize the political space and to open up the political sphere for competitive ideas was the right way to go. The question of the Somalis, the Oromos, the Amharas, and so on, is basically a question of democracy. They want to be here, they want to be part of the process. They want to share the pie. But they can't do that if the political sphere excludes them from this kind of exercise. So the way, what one would have assumed upon release of these political prisoners was that the government would sit down with them and negotiate and chart a path towards democracy, towards a free, fair, and competitive election. And that's what we expected. They release them one day, and the next day they impose emergency rule, which is really a military rule. You cannot, in one hand, open up, release the political prisoners from their small cells, then impose a state of emergency, and put these political leaders in a larger cell called state of emergency. Because the state of emergency is, violates so much of the rights. You cannot organize in their, you cannot. These opposition parties are out, but they cannot travel anywhere. Last week, Reda, Mekale, and others were going to Nakante, where they were invited to address the people, to be welcomed. They were blocked from getting there. They were forced to sleep on the street and return. So you can't, they're creating, they're undertaking these contradictory steps that nullify each other, and that put not only the government, also the country in danger. So, in one hand, I'm optimistic because on one side of the aisle, on the opposition side, is a completely non-violent movement. It's a social movement that has resisted the temptation to go into armed and violent confrontation. They have remained civil, and they have remained disciplined, and they have remained non-violent. So this gives you hope that we might have a chance to reduce a possibility of an outbreak of full-blown civil war and collapse of the state. But on the other hand, you have a political establishment that doesn't seem to get it, or that doesn't seem to have a clear idea of what's happening. You know, since Mallas's days, the ruling party has no leader. There is no single leader that commands respect among them, and there are a bunch of rival individuals, lords and factions being for influence here and there, and they don't listen to each other, they don't listen to the public. What the political leaders decide, the intelligence leaders violate, or the military does something and the intelligence does another stuff. So this kind of anarchy within the ruling party might spread into a nationwide anarchy. Right now, the ruling party is extremely anarchic. They do not have a clear policy, they do not have a clear understanding, they don't have a clear strategy, and of course they don't have a leader. It's a very anarchic situation. Let me give you one example. Just before the declaration of state of emergency, the government spokesperson was on the record saying there is no need for a state of emergency, the prevailing condition does not require a state of emergency. The claim that the state of emergency is coming is false. The next day, state of emergency is declared. Just last week, the foreign minister was saying the country is a complete peace and stability. But on the other side, the military spokesperson is coming and saying the country is about to collapse and we are taking over. So you have anarchy within the government. That anarchy could create anarchy outside the government. It could spill into the population. It could put us in serious jeopardy.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jawar Mohamed, political analyst and Executive Director of the Romo Media Network. Thank you so much, and we will continue to follow the development in Ethiopia. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you.